Good afternoon. Namaskar, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, and Ayubowan. We welcome you to the RC Psych webinar on South Asian History Month, titled Then and Now for International Medical Graduates from South Asia. It's really wonderful, as always, to see the college taking a lead in such fantastic initiatives. And it's without any doubt that whenever such celebrations occur, when it's got anything to do with equality, diversity, and equality, it's heartening to see that the college is always at the forefront. So this is something which we've been discussing and we've been celebrating for a while. So this year again, we felt that it was without doubt no rocket science that we continue with this, especially with all the work that's been going on. Now, before we start, I would like to just go through some of the housekeeping. There will be a joint Q&A with all speakers at the end of the webinar, so do stay on. Right at the end, last 10 minutes probably, that's what we will be doing. Please, can you also tweet throughout the event while you're attending? Please use at RC Psych and also hashtag SAHM, which is our South Asian History Month, SAHM, and also hashtag RC Psych Live. This is for Twitter, so you can use the hashtag RC Psych and then also SAHM and RC Psych Live. This webinar is being recorded, and so those who haven't seen it can view it later as well. And the recording will be available to watch free on the website of RC Psych. Those who are attending will receive attendance certificates approximately 1 week after the webinar. So because we have about an hour, we've got lots to cover, and we've got some fantastic panel members, and I would like to introduce them to you, and then we'll go through hearing from them and their experiences, such as the richness of where we are. So one of the first persons I'd like to introduce, most of you wouldn't need an introduction, but it is Dr. Trudi Seneviratne, who has been the registrar of the college since 2020. Trudi qualified as a medical practitioner in 1992 and trained at St. Bartholomew's Medical School in London. She's been a consultant, adult and perinatal psychiatrist at South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust since 2002, and clinical director for Psychological Medicine Clinical Academic Group at the Lewisham Directorate. Welcome, Trudi. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Shahid. Lovely to be here.
Excellent. We also have Professor J S Bamrah, who's just joined us. J S is an international medical graduate who settled in Manchester in the 80s. He was born in the tropical jungle in Tanzania and studied medicine in his ancestral Punjab in India. Went back to Tanzania for a bit before arriving to the concrete jungle of London to start a new life. His experiences through different cultures and countries, coming from a minority Sikh community, shaped up much of his interest in people, medicine, psychiatry, and inequalities. Welcome, JS. Lovely to have you here. We then have Dr. Anis Ahmed, who is a consultant forensic psychiatrist in Birmingham Solihull Mental Health Trust. He is president of the British Bangladeshi Psychiatric Association and chair of VIPSIC, which is the Volunteering and the International Psychiatric Special Interest Group at RC Psych. He's a clinical lead in psychiatry at Aston Medical School. Welcome, Anis.
Thank you, Shahid, for having me here.
Lovely to have you here, Anis. And last but not least, we've got Dr. Amna Hussain. Amna Hussain is a graduate of Punjab Medical College, Pakistan. She migrated to the UK in early 2021. She worked in acute medicine for about a year before deciding to check up psychiatry to see how it was. And she's been with us at St. Matthew's Healthcare for about 6 months, and she has fallen in love with the speciality to the extent that she will be joining the RC Psych training program in Middlesbrough in ID training. So welcome, Amna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Latif. Happy to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you all here. And like I said, such is the richness of the diversity. I wish we could have we did try to get people from other South Asian backgrounds, but we, because of the timing, etc. But listen, we've got you guys, and it's so rich. I mean, we're here to celebrate the stories that make up our diverse and vibrant communities. So I'm going to be asking questions, if that's okay. I might not be asking you all the same questions, but I will ask. But anyone who wants to chip in, please do say so. They are very basic questions, but the idea today is to celebrate the then and now. As you can see from our panel, we have a diversity from different age groups, should I use the word, going back right from the 70s all up to 2021. So that's where we are. So I'm going to kick off, and I'm going to kick off with JS, if that's all right, JS. And tell us, if you like, a little bit about your early life in the UK. Some of your experiences briefly, please.
So yes, I came in September 2020. I'd like to think 20. Sorry, Trudy, I'm impersonating you. Yeah, I'm the oldie in the group. Thank you, Shahid, for picking on me, okay? So I came in 1979 in September from Arusha, which is very near anybody who's been to Tanzania, the beautiful Mount Kilimanjaro. So from the foothills of Kilimanjaro, came straight to London. And my intention really was at the time to do post-graduation, because were it possible to do that in Tanzania, my at the time home country, I would have done it there. But of course, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, all the colleges, had a very good reputation abroad. So it was the kind of thing you did when you were an Indian. You know, you either went to America or you came over to UK. The majority of us came over to UK because that was the grab. It wasn't the money, I have to tell you. It was really the reputation of the NHS and the quality of the post-graduation and the training that we all got. And we were very much seen as, from all over, including India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, we were seen to be really very much, this is part of our heritage is the NHS. So that was the draw for me, Shahid.
Thank you, JS. That's so much richness in there, and it's such a I must say, in the 70s, we'll come to the challenges in a bit, but obviously different challenges from then to now. Now I'm going to go full swing boomerang and come to 2021, which takes me to Amna. So Amna, you came here only 3 years ago, or should I say 2 years ago, actually. So tell us about your very brief experience in your early life in the UK.
Well, first of all, I came in March and it was quite cold, and of course, none of us is used to that, especially when you come from Pakistan. So I struggled so much, and it was still COVID. Everything was shut down, and so it was very difficult for me because I came from Lahore, and my social life was affected. I think I settled well when I started working. So I started working in September 2021. And that's when things got better for me. But my struggles with daily life and things that would have been easier if I was in Pakistan, especially like now I'm struggling to get a driving license. It's such a struggle. Oh my God, nobody talks about that. So just things are so different, but I think things are better different. And I think I made a good choice. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Amna. It's such a contrast to then and now, which we'll come back to, as I said, in a moment. Trudy, I just want to come over to you briefly, if that's okay. You've had a slightly different logistical, if you like, experience, because my understanding is that your father came to the UK as a doctor, and you grew up earlier on. So tell us a little bit. I think you when we were talking at the college a few weeks ago, you very briefly told me about you remember the times when your dad came from Sri Lanka. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that time?
Yeah, Shahid, of course. Yeah. So, yes, I'm a little bit, it's a different time point. So I arrived actually in that heat, the summer heat of 1976. But actually, my dad was an IMG, and he had come a few years previously to Britain, and as you've heard from JS, his love of Britain, his want to be, his desire to be a doctor in Britain was what grabbed him, and he tried to make everything okay before the family came over, and I came to Britain as a child. He was not a psychiatrist, but he was a pediatrician, and actually, what I recall, we ended up in East London, and actually, what I recall, apart from that heat of, which was lovely, of 76. Was an incredibly hard chunk of years, actually. it was very, very difficult for all sorts of reasons. He being an IMG, and actually he was a brilliantly educated person from Sri Lanka, speaking the Queen's English, but trying to pass his exams in this, in the UK, trying to get his pediatric exams. And we were living in sort of hospital accommodation in East London, and moving from there to like a, living in a single room in a GP practice for a couple of years. And he was trying to pass his exams and not really I just remember a dad just not really understanding why he was not passing an exam. And him saying, well, I don't understand why people don't understand my accent, because actually he spoke the Queen's English, he wrote the Queen's English. And it was really, really incredibly tough, I have to say. And he eventually, it took him about a decade though to pass the pediatric exams. Eventually he passed them in Scotland. And in that time, I remember actually he also faced, I wondered why, I only learned this years and years later, that he would go off to court on a routine basis while he was working at the sort of Mothers Hospital in East London. And, years later, actually, he would have been 91 had he lived, but he died 20 odd years ago. Realized that he told me that he'd faced a huge amount of discrimination, racial discrimination, whilst working at the hospital from colleagues in the hospital. And he decided, so this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s, and he decided actually he was going to do something about it, and he actually took the trust to court and he won. But during that time, it was a period of huge upheaval. And interestingly, so he worked as a specialty grade staff grade doctor all his life, because although he had all the skills to be a consultant in this country, he never was given that opportunity. Was always a staff grade. So I feel very, very passionately about how hard he worked as a staff grade in pediatrics all through East London, through Tower Hamlets, Hackney, that entire patch. So certainly his being from Sri Lanka, and I'm Sinhalese, and I feel like actually I've brought my my Sinhalese part of me very much into being a psychiatrist. It's a really important part of who I am. And actually he was not so keen on me doing psychiatry, because actually there are many psychiatrists who would have been in their 90s now, but actually it wasn't seen as a priority subject in Sri Lanka for him, certainly. And I think it's changed enormously now for people from Sri Lanka. There are many psychiatrists from Sri Lanka, and we have many senior psychiatrists from Sri Lanka who've worked in the UK as well. So yeah, lots and lots of elements, I think, of my heritage from Sri Lanka, but also my hands-on experience of what it was like to be an IMG, a medical graduate arriving in the UK in the 70s, and being a daughter of an IMG, and everything, I guess, the experiences, some of them rich, some of them amazing, but some of them incredibly difficult, that have paved the way to who I am as a psychiatrist today. I think actually it influenced my choice as psychiatry. Influenced my choice, because one of the things he talked about being a pediatrician and I mentioned this actually at a lecture the other day, was being a pediatrician. He talked about how paralyzed he felt looking after the Asian communities in Tower Hamlets in East London. He'd see young kids with encopresis and enuresis, primary and secondary, and all from Asian backgrounds, and he'd sort of say, gosh, as a pediatrician, I can see there's so much people being victimized, young children being bullied at school, and he'd not been able to help the parents and the families. And clearly a lot of the physical health problems, the enuresis and encopresis, derive from psychological factors, but how he as a staff grade in pediatrics felt paralyzed to be able to help the kids and the families properly.
Yeah, well, hats off to your dad. First of all, thanks for sharing that, Trudi. And I'm sure it was never easy for your dad or for yourself growing up, having grown up in that part of London myself as well. Hackney, it must have been a huge challenge. So hats off to your dad at that time. There's a lot of people people like JS doing so much work and, you know, got so much support. I'm just wondering, I can't even imagine.
I loved
what
it too, by
support-
the way. There were amazing things growing up in Hackney, and I, you know, I love Hackney as well, and still do.
Yeah. Thank you, Trudi, for that. Now, thank you for touching on the challenges, because that's what I'm going to ask Anis coming next. Anis, can you, again, just briefly just tell us when you came to the UK, when you came from Bangladesh, and just touch on some of the challenges at the time that you experienced. You're on mute, Anis.
Thank you, Shahid. To be honest, when I started my journey, I never thought of any challenges I would face, because some of the things that I had learned over the years, this was an alien concept to me. For example, I still remember we had an inductions arranged by the London Dean, and the concept of induction also relatively new for me. Why would I need these inductions? And in that inductions, there was a talk about racism. And I thought that I'm going to be a doctor. What to do with the racism here? I'm here to learn, to serve, and get my post-graduation and build my career. Why are they talking about the racism? And there was a lady from King's Fund, and she gave a very illuminating talk about, this is the first thing that really struck me, because I was doing an attachment into the King's College. She said that if you walk down the corridor, you'll always see the black faces on the ground. As you grow high up, it becomes more whiter and whiter and whiter. And then I think I realized that what she meant, that if you wanted to make your career progress, there is something to do with your skin color. It's not only the qualification, then you need to navigate your way. So that was a big shock for me, because I never thought about that one. But then I think well, I was lucky that my initial days was good in Stoke-on-Trent, because most of my colleagues were from minority ethnic groups, because these are one of the deprived area. I still remember when I first got into the Stoke-on-Trent, there was a newspaper lying on the doctor's mess, and it says that, I think it was a 2003 or 2004, it says that Stoke-on-Trent was ranked as the second worst city in the whole of England. So what it means that it was so deprived that no one wants to come. So we were the only one who was there. But eventually we have a bunch of doctors, mostly from overseas at that time. We supported each other. I struggled initially to go through the exams, but I think what I would say, some of the consultants has been really helpful. So I have some consultant who would stay late in the afternoon up to 7 o'clock to practice with us. Passing the exam was one of the biggest hurdle. And when I say exam, most of us would pass that theory exam at one go. It was the OSCEs, where you need to have some proficiency in language as well as the culture. So that took me some time to get grips with. And afterwards, what I found is finding your way to go up in the career ladder. So this is where, again, I would say I'm glad that I came in a time where these things have started being addressed. So the Race Equality Act is becoming a more prominent. The college is taking more initiatives, and we have good colleagues around us that are supporting each other. So that's in a nutshell my journey.
Thank you, Anis. Thank you for that very frank update about what you experienced and some of your shocks and surprises, if you like. I mean, JS, this is right up your street, isn't it? This is what you've been saying for years and years. Far back as I can remember. So, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, 2000, and you know the teens of the 2000s. We're well into the 20s now. So where are we at the moment, JS, with all the work that you've done? We will come to Amna and ask her whether there has been changes since 2021. But JS, you are on mute, JS, just before you start.
Yeah, thank you, Shahid. Well, listen, I could relate very much to what Trudi's father went through, and Anis has just described that. And you know, we must not forget, and hopefully we can end on a positive note as well, Shahid, is that, you know, when we came in, there were pioneers before me. Things were really quite difficult, you know. I mean, I'd never failed an exam in my life. I had been right at the top throughout my school in Tanga in Tanzania. I had passed through medical school without any difficulties at all in India. And when I came here, like Trudy's father, I couldn't pass the bloody plab. Would you believe it? And it took me 3 attempts, actually. I passed in Edinburgh, so there must be a good connection in Edinburgh for BME doctors at the time. I passed in Edinburgh, and nobody would give me a job. So I applied 50 places. Nobody would give me a job. And curiously, I thought I'd either do psychiatry or surgery. I either wanted to be a psychiatrist or be a surgeon, for whatever reason. And I worked in London, Queen Mary's Hospital in Sidcup. And I had a very good surgeon, you know, as a junior doctor. I still remember his name, really good chap. He said to me, look, why don't you go and see a psychiatrist friend of mine for your career? And my registrar said to me, look, if you want to be a surgeon, first of all, you've got to be a white British graduate. Second of all, if you're a foreign white graduate, you've got a good chance. Then the chance will come to a brown or a black local graduate, and you'll be fourth in the tier. That wasn't the reason why I took up psychiatry, by the way. But, you know, there have been many hurdles through people's lives. And then again, you know, you come across somebody like David Goldberg, whom everybody will know, an eminent professor, who really was absolutely amazing. Not a bone of discrimination in his body, you know. And when somebody, and many of my colleagues, like Trudy's dad, they got so fed up, they would leave the country. They would go to America and Canada, mostly America and Canada at the time. And what do we achieve? Look, we can talk about it now. We couldn't talk about it at the time. You know, we were ashamed to even say something like that. We took it very personally. And there weren't networks. There are good networks, one or two that you chair, Shahid, and Anis chairs. So, you know, these networks have helped people to not only integrate, but also be within that culture, because they can get that kind of support, understanding support that there is available. So those networks have helped. I think the colleges come on as well, more that we could do. I remember I used to run a racial discrimination course for all newly appointed consultants at the college. I ran that for a decade with the then chief executive of the college. But we never really, unless the NHS is in harmony with all these initiatives, the other initiatives don't work, I'm afraid. And the biggest problem has been, I'm afraid, and still is, the discrimination within the NHS. And Trudy mentioned SAS doctors. I'm afraid, Trudy, things haven't changed very much for SAS doctors. I was really quite ashamed of the college AGM voting the way it went. I have to say it, because I thought, here it is, you know, it's going full circle, traumatizing these staff grade doctors or affiliates, because they should have a say in their careers. And so there is still a lot of work to do, Shahid. I cannot pretend to you that there isn't.
Absolutely, JS. I think you've just summed it up really, really nicely. And I'm witness to the JS, to all the work that you've, not only NHS, the GMC, etc., that the work that you're putting in, you know, it's phenomenal. But as you rightly said, there's lots of work to be done. How do we connect the dots? I think that's the bottom line. Amna, things are still an issue, are they? 2021, you arrive in the UK. I saw you shaking your head. So tell us a little bit about your experience. I mean, challenges. Trudy, Anis, and JS have very succinctly put down their experiences. Work is still ongoing. So you coming in, having been in the country just a couple of years, or more than a couple of years, tell us, have things changed in your experience of arriving in the UK?
Dr. Latif, I would say that it varies from workplace to workplace. So when I was in my first placement, when I was doing acute medicine, to the consultant who hired me, the first thing that he said to me was, you have two disadvantages. One, you are a woman. Two, you are a woman of color. And it was funny because he was a brown person himself. So we do talk about the racial discrimination from white people, but there's a lot of racial discrimination within the racial minorities. And I always think, what does a slave dream of? Enslaving others. So this mentality is more harmful than the typical racism, because it's very difficult to bring it to the spotlight, because people would say, oh, he's from the same race. How could he say that to you? So I suffered a lot at my first placement. And when I joined my second placement, I saw things very differently. And I think one thing that I would advise everyone who have joined their new placements or coming to the UK is to keep an open mind. It's not a bed of roses at all. You have to work twice as hard as any other person in the room, and there are high chances you'll still be not given your flowers. So be a realistic overview of what you're stepping into.
Well said. Thank you, Amna. Thank you for that. And we're definitely getting some comments in the chat box. Just people agreeing, thumbs up and totally agreeing as to what other people are. Very similar to the narrative that all of you are giving. Trudi, I mean, you've grown up in the UK, and I'm sure with your very strong cultural heritage with Sri Lanka, with your coming at an early age. What influence has being in the UK had on you as a person?
I feel very lucky, actually. I feel very, very lucky to have my Sinhalese heritage, to feel completely immersed in my Sinhalese heritage. I can speak the language. I go back there regularly when I can, and it's influenced all of me growing up, actually. But I feel quite lucky in that I think despite the adversity I described earlier, from that very, very hard move to the UK and all those, really hard years for my parents. By the way, my mum, who was a pediatric nurse, she was a neonatal nurse in the only children's hospital in Sri Lanka. And she was not allowed to, she couldn't do her nursing exams here. So she ended up working in a handbag factory and then Maynard Sweet factory, and then took her years to get her nursing qualifications, over 20 years, and she eventually got there. So that's another bit of the story. But I think I have such a richness and a fondness, I have to say, for the richness that there is in growing up in Britain. So I can only, I'm a very positive person. So despite the hardship, if you like, my parents were incredibly positive, and they had a positive outlook and a hopeful, positive mindset. They had a mindset of equality, and despite sort of experiencing racism, perhaps from my dad, he never outwardly spoke about, those negative experiences. He protected as much as possible. And so I have grown up with that mindset of equality, that which is, just that equity, equality. Everybody deserves the best in life and to be given the best opportunity to achieve of their best. And I guess one of my reflections is that because I had a very idealized sort of early years in Sri Lanka, what I brought with me, I became a very quiet child for pretty much my entire schooling in the UK, because I quickly realized that by being the girl that put the hand up and answered questions, you actually quickly got shut down. And so I became really, really quiet. And it was only I was raised a Catholic. My mum's a Buddhist, but I was raised a Catholic because of my dad. It was only my secondary school, Sister Mary Johns, so she was the head of the school. She was the one that sort of pulled me out of myself and said, well, actually, Gertrude, you do have stuff to say. You're very, very quiet and you don't say much. And she just gently started helping me to sort of open my voice and be able to sort of contribute more widely to sort of the conversation in sixth form by that point. I then ended up being voted in as the head girl the following year, which was a really lovely thing to have happened. So Shahid, I guess it's a very broad answer to your question, but I think what all of this has allowed me to do is genuinely open my eyes properly to everybody, to a human being, and looking at the totality of who a human being is, the background that they're from, everything that the person brings to them. And I think that's where psychiatry is such a beautiful discipline, because as psychiatrists, as the doctors in mental health, we have that unique ability to look at the whole person and every facet of their background, whether they are indigenous to the country, whether they have a migration story happening or not, the complexities of who people are, and to think about actually the appropriate treatment for that person based on that background, and truly sort of, we talk about biopsychosocial, don't we, in our formulation of difficulties and problems, but actually bringing in that, I'd like to sort of redefine that and use cultural, biopsycho-socio-cultural framework is what we should be talking about now, actually, for everybody.
Absolutely, and I think you've summed it up really well, Trudi, and that's something, because when you put things out there, it's those things that bring about changes. And biopsychosocial has been a very Western model, but the amount of diversity that we have here, yes, why not? I think cultural, spiritual elements of one's how one manages themselves, not only with their mental health, but everyday life. Cultural is so important. It's so good to see so much activity in the chat box here, and thank you to Wami Kumar Rahman, Deep, and Ananta and Manchan Kaur for bringing up some really relevant points, discussion. Sonia Zakaria as well, and Sonia has just said herself that it took me a long time to know what racism actually is. So this is some of the challenges which people experience, and not only when they think it's a norm, and it sort of helps having these kind of conversations, and people like yourselves, leaders like yourselves, champions like yourselves being out there and doing the work. JS, I just want to ask you a little bit. I know you touched on it before, and you did say as part of your answer to the previous question, you did say that don't want to completely focus on the challenge. There are challenges, and there's lots of work to be done. There's no doubt about that. Tell us, are there celebrations? Do we need to celebrate? Here we are, South Asian Heritage History Month. We're here. We're talking. We're able to do that. Many years ago, we weren't doing it, and here we are. Is there plenty to celebrate about as South Asians? You're on mute, JS, on mute.
Yeah, you missed that. My best 2 seconds of the afternoon. Of course, absolutely. I think I come from a background where I went to a Catholic school in Tanzania, and Irish Catholic school, and went to India, and absolutely enriched by just sitting there with people, because I didn't understand much about the Indian culture. Until I went to India, and listening to Radio Lahore. That was the catch of the time, because if you were in Punjab, you didn't listen to Radio India or Indian Air India. You listened to Radio Lahore because you listened to Ghulam Ali and Mehdi Hasan and Jagjit Singh and all those amazing people who enriched our culture on all sides, really. And Binaka Geetmala from Sri Lanka on a Wednesday evening. Trudi, you probably don't know this, but your dad would. All those nuances in life, the classical music that we have, the ghazals, the poetry, the richness of that. I wish other people could experience it. And of course, being a Sikh, we were really brought out of the richness of Islamism and Hinduism. And so there's a lot of stuff that is already in my DNA. And it is very important to keep that, and as Trudi said, she's kept true to her colors, which is she's British, but she's very much Sri Lankan as well. And it's absolutely possible to have dual or triple identities, as Shahid, I would say. And I think we should do more of that. So South Asian, there are bits that I wished didn't happen in our heritage, but we have to learn from those and never let those things happen again.
Absolutely. And just talking about being champions of both cultures, as Trudi has rightly said, with a very strong Sri Lankan Sinhalese background she's holding on to while celebrating being British. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's being champions of both cultures, as my brother said to me many, many years ago, which I still remember to date. Anis, diversity initiatives. What do you think? I mean, there's lots being done. We've got a long way to go. We're seeing a lot of chat on the side going on, people coming on. We got Pearl, who's discussed. We've had discussions very recently at the Congress, the voting. Everyone's disappointed, but it's a vote. So what are the initiatives required? What more do we need to do in your eyes and in your role as a leader, as a chair of the British Bangladeshi Psychiatric Association, in your role as VIPSIG, where we see you traveling around the world and taking your experience as a psychiatrist to those parts of the world and bring that richness back to the UK to assist the communities there. So what comes to your mind when we think about diversity initiatives?
Thank you very much. I think you have hit the nail in the head, because the modern time, if you walk in my ward, most of the patient population are from diverse background. And it is well recognized in terms of the evidence. If the workforce and the treatment that we offer doesn't meet the needs for the diverse population, the outcome is likely to be poor. So there is no doubt about that one. So it is actually imperative. It is not a choice. It is an imperative to have the diverse workforce and also the cultural competency, not only the mental health, also the physical health. Now, how can we address that one? I think a few things I would say, because I think someone have mentioned in the chat, I saw that is a really a good point. Many cases, it is those who also we come from the minority ethnic background. Once we reach a certain stage, we tend to forget our heritage, or we tend to forget our own problems. Because as you mentioned, I'm now in a leadership position. If I forgot my past, it is unlikely I would be able to help people like Amna who are new in this country to have a better journey. So in that regard, what I learned, again, as a leader, I think there are many things I need to educate myself. We talk about equality, but we tend to forget about the equity. So I think this key concept is very important, because what tend to happen, if I do not know the difference between these two as a leader, I might be supportive of some kind of policies or some kind of initiative which based on the equality, which actually says that everyone is equal for everything. But when it comes to the equity, not everyone should have equal opportunities. But to get the equal, if someone is start the journey from the back, you need to give some leverage to that person to be equal to other person to run the race. And if this concept is not in the leader's mind, it is highly unlikely whatever initiative you take will make the system more diverse. And I give you one example. In one of the hospital that I was working for a mid-level positions, they have a interview and other selection criteria. So one of the criteria is for the candidates to write an impromptu email within 10 minutes. Now, obviously, whoever English is the first language will excel in terms of, because the way they are going to judge for that post grammar and how they articulate the email. In my view, for that particular position, that was not absolutely necessary. Because the job that was being delivered is not a clerical job. It is not a press release job. It is a job for caring for the patients. Obviously, those doctors who are running for those posts have passed the CLAB exam, passed the IELTS exam, and they have been, because it's a middle grade job, they've been working as a doctor for many years by then. So bringing that particular criteria, it may sound equal, but it is actually undermining the issues with the equity. So I would say that as a leaders, we need to be aware of the equity issues, and we need to scrutinize any new initiative or any projects that is coming through, whether it fulfills the equity criteria. Coming back to it is very disappointing, the voting. And if we look, almost more than half the members are from the minority group who has voted for that motion. So we need to have our internal dialogue. What is it that is making us to go against the voting rights for the SS Gate doctors. Thank you, Shahid. It is a long-winded answer. I've tried my best.
Thank you. No, Anis, that's a very rich answer, and I think obviously your experience in the community and your experience and being a champion of diversity obviously is just coming through what you are saying. And absolutely, I think one of the things we need to look at, absolutely, and this is a conversation which is going on the side as well, is in relation to giving the example of the SAS vote. And first thing we need to look at is, the numbers that turned out for the voting and how that voting was, why it went in the direction. But a vote is a vote, but it's disappointing, but it's where we are at the moment. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts, although you've been only here 2.5 years in the UK, just following on from our colleagues' discussions. What do you think, as someone who's just been in the UK a very short while, someone who is just about to kick off their career as a trainee psychiatrist, what initiatives would you like to see?
What initiatives from the organizations and people on the top of the hierarchy? Or just
well, it could be
anyone?
it could be it could be your organization, it could be the college, it could be any organization which you are involved in.
I think sometimes I feel like that NHS does a lot of lip service than the actual work. So there are talks about understanding culture, empathizing with people from different cultures, and there are also positions as the guardians of speaking up. But in the end, when actually somebody is struggling, a person who's come from a different country, from a different background, I don't see that most people actively put effort to understand their differences and the way they have been raised and the way their culture is. I remember when I started working in NHS, one of the consultants gave feedback that I'm not chatty. And I would have liked if I was asked by her, why am I not chatty? Because if you look back to our culture, women are not supposed to be chatty in South Asia. So I think a true empathy and a true effort to understand and ask the right questions to the people that you're giving feedback to. Otherwise, it's just a lip service.
So less talk, more walk is what you are saying, isn't it? So doing it as it says on the tin, and I think that's so powerful, Amna. Thank you for that. Some of us who've been here, who for many years, I think we've been through a journey, but it's something which our expectations from the next generation of IMGs that are coming through. So yeah, there is a question, and I just want to throw that to yourself, JS, if I may, from one of our attendees. It's Wami Kurremhan Gajdar. And I won't read it, it's a longer one, but he's basically saying that so many South Asians come with their own baggage, basically, and that particular baggage can have an impact on their biases and reverse racism and with castes, etc. Any views on that?
Yes, I was going to comment on that. So thank you very much for that question. I think that, when you invited me to your hospital, Shahid, is there an echo coming? I'm not quite sure. Yeah. So, okay, that might be better. Yeah. Sorry, Shahid. I didn't want to silence you, silence the host. I've got power in my hands. But there's a serious point to this, which is that, as I mentioned when I came to your hospital, we all have biases. That bias can become prejudice. That prejudice can become a discrimination against somebody. And I think we have to be very careful. I think some of the people in the chat boxes have said that, they're obviously disturbed that sometimes it's brown on brown or black on black or brown on black and all that sort of thing. So the racism is racism. It doesn't matter where it happens, which ethnic society is the perpetrator. It doesn't matter. And I think we really need to look at our conscience when we go out of our house we must never ever let our prejudices discriminate against anybody on the basis of ethnicity or racism. And I think that is the bottom point, really. Have I lost the question? Let me just refer, the question. So, yeah, and I think again, of course, and I think that, as Amna has alluded to, I think we've got a lot of, particularly in the South Asian culture, we have a lot of work to do in terms of giving women equality and giving LGBT plus an equality to our status as we perceive it as men. It's still a macho culture. So instead of white men in gray jackets, I don't want to see brown men in brown suits at the top of the table. No, we need to take the best expertise from people, the best talent they have, and make it grow. Now, that's what I've learned in the last 10 years, Shahid. And I think each one of us, 173 people have logged on. Shahid, you've done an amazing job, and I think, yes, the college is doing a lot of work. Individually, we make up the college. And individually, I can tell you, we have work to do.
Thank you, JS. Very well said. Yes, certainly. There's been a lot of comments on the sides, Jay. It's just people just echoing what you have said, mirroring what you've said, but also there are some comments coming through about some very, very supportive colleagues that despite all the challenges, there are a lot of supportive colleagues and seniors out there who do mentor, coach, show us where the direction, signposts, etc. So with all this discussion, we don't want to take that away from those who really support the cause. Talking about, Jay has just ended on the note of the college. We are, as individuals, working in the college. Some of us, like Trudi, working as a senior officer. We have others who are working in different areas, doing our own little bit. We've got, thousands of members who are doing the little bit always. Trudi, what other role, how can the college, in your view, I know we have the EDI during Adrian's time, we got continue with the anti-racism work going on. I don't want to go through that. It was discussed quite a bit at the Congress, as has been the EDI recently. There's a lot of training. Is there anything else in your view, Trudi, that can be done or should be done?
Oh my goodness, there is a huge amount, Shahid, we can do. This is a journey, isn't it? And actually, we should all feel really proud of our college, I have to say. I think we should all feel really proud that we are in a very, very different place as a college today. I've forgotten, is it the 27th, isn't it, of July 23, compared to many, decades ago. And as psychiatrists, as a discipline, but also at a college, I think we've taken, in my time as a consultant, I've been a consultant for a long time, coming up for 25 years now. The college is doing things very, very differently to think about people who've either made that migration journey or are second or third generation in the UK, and thinking about all sorts of diversity issues and how that affects us as clinicians, practitioners, both here, and also how we learn from each other. So I think the college can do a huge amount going forward. I think we just need to keep being, I think we need to just be courageous and keep taking these important and sometimes very, very, very difficult conversations forwards, including examining our own conscience sometimes, examining where discrimination still exists. When we see that, we flag it up. We have, we have an ally, we have a family of allies, if you like, that we continue sort of working as a family, taking this forward. So I think we can only build and learn from things, can't we? And I think that's what I'd love the college to be able to do, that we carry on building and learning from everything that we've had. I think there's also some nice comments about celebrating. I think we have such a diversity of people in our college that we should celebrate people from diverse backgrounds, particularly from South Asian backgrounds, as that's what we're celebrating, not just in a month though, but across the year, and think about how the richness of our cultures can continue within the college, but also within psychiatry. I mean, I would like to see Congress, events that we have, bring in the richness of those cultures, to bring the music, to bring the art to our events, to think about how those, the music and the arts and all the other wonderful richness of those cultures are used as part of psychiatry and as part of supporting people, looking after people. So I think that's where we can do more in the college. Yes, we can do guidelines, and it's brilliant that we've got our Act Against Racism guidelines, you know, to help in the workplace. That's only one element, but I don't want it just to be about the race issue. There are so many other areas that we want to think about as well.
Thank you very much, Trudi. Absolutely. And, you know, it's just wonderful the work that you've done since being, you know, your predecessors and, you know, the work going forward. And I think we're able to do the work that we are because of the current officers that we have in place who are so encouraging and allow us to utilize platforms. And it's totally right, isn't it, that how we meaningfully utilize these for betterness for the next generation and us as well. There is a question coming up from Raja Ahmed.
Shahid, can I ask you on that note? I mean,
Yes.
we're one of the very few colleges who are celebrating South Asian History Month. Can you tell me whether that was, maybe you can't answer this question, was there complete support from the college, or did you have to go through some resistant barriers? I just thought I'd ask you that question.
I'll be very honest, and I can give you a straight answer. There was immense support. I just had to put it down once, and it was all formulated. Most of the work that has been done here, I mean, I looked at the panel, but it's the work. So, you know, hats off to the college. And I'm not saying that because Trudy's here, because we're utilizing, I can say that as a fact that I just put the idea down, and the rest I didn't have to do. I just had to get you guys together, making sure. So, you know, it is something which I think we need to be proud of. Not only proud of, but I think shout out. And I'd just like to add also, JS, that a lot of my other colleagues and friends who are not psychiatrists, who do belong to other specialities and other Royal College, do look at us enviously, because the kind of work that we do, we are in a lot of ways, we are ahead of the game. Having said that, there's still a lot of work to be done, and we can't take our foot off the pedal. We are celebrating, but we also use to work the other sea, and that's the challenging. We have to keep that challenge. People like yourself, JS, I know you're always got your foot in there, and you're always guiding me as well, you know, mentoring me through how to utilize some of the platforms. So thank you to you as well. There is a question from Raja Ahmed, and it's to Amna, if I may. What would be Amna's advice to young IMGs considering UK and psychiatry? Before you answer that, Amna, I'm just conscious that we've got about 8 minutes left, and I just want to obviously bring in others as well, and there might be some other questions. So I'm just conscious of that before I allow you to speak. Over to you, Amna.
Okay, so my advice would be to the IMGs is to get your driving license from your country, because you'll be allowed to drive for 1 year. It's very difficult to get the license exam done here. The second thing I would say is if you want to take training in psychiatry, do not just take it as a professional training. It's a very personal training as well. It can help you become a better human being. It gives you a lot of insight, because I've seen that people in psychiatry, some of them are very So that is something that I would advise to people. Thanks.
Thank you, Amna. That's very nice and succinct. We've got another question from Manchand Kaur. I think we need to educate and support IMGs around unconscious racism and anti-racism. We need to join together here more and have somewhere to go and not feel alone and fearful about challenges. More joint up thinking and support from groups. Anis, a quick answer from you into that. Do you want to answer that, respond to that quickly?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with that. And I think I have told you when I first came here, this concept of racism didn't exist in my mind, because the country that I grew up, I am the majority. But now when I got educated through this country, through various workshops and other things that I have seen, I learned that the reverse racism or the prejudice exists in our culture as well. For example, it reminds me back to my dad came here in 1960s. So when we were growing up, he finished his post-graduation in histopathology in this country and went back home. So he used to tell us a snippet of stories. One of the stories he told me when I was in high school, that once he went to the Hyde Park, and apparently there is a corner in the Hyde Park where anyone can give any speech. So once he was walking past there, one of the black guy hold his hand and said, "Come and join my religion, where black will be the God and white will be the devil." It really struck me, because then my dad said, that man was saying that look into all the scripture, all religious, all culture, everywhere you'll see black is considered as a bad. Why should it be? And then coming back to right now, when I grew up, if you look into the marketing of the Fair and Lovely cream, it is a huge market to make your skin white. So that is embedded in ourselves. We may have this unconscious bias as well to aspire to become a white and correlate white as a supremacy. So I entirely agree with that one. And as I said, that I have learned a lot coming in this country, going through this process, and every day keeping my mind open. I would suggest that it's very vital for us to keep a growth mindset. I just wanted to add, I think someone asked what the IMG trainee doctors most important advice. I tend not to give advice. I tend to share my learning. One of the things that I have learned, have a positive mindset. Whatever happened to your life, do not look back, go forward. For example, now I look back, when I failed the CASC exam, I'm very glad that I failed the options. Had I passed that one, I would never have a chance to pursue the forensic psychiatry, which I am so happy to do with. As I said, if I hadn't have the growth mindset, I would have pack up, go elsewhere, or choose something else. But I persisted, and I think things will unfold in a better manner if you have a growth mindset. Thank you, Shahid, giving me the chance to point.
Thank you so much, Anis. Now we're really running out of time, and I just want to say thank you to all of you, but also I don't want to go without thank you, Charlie Hills, Priscilla Mohita, and Kessia Wills, to help put this together. Because without them, this would not have been possible, and without them, we would not have got these backgrounds either that we've got behind us. So thank you so much for that. We've got about 3 minutes. What I really want to do is maybe 20 seconds each. Final word. Let's start off with you, Trudi. 20 seconds.
Okay, 20 seconds. I think we should celebrate. Let's turn this into a moment of celebration and start thinking about how do we celebrate the richness of our South Asian heritage within psychiatry and as psychiatrists, and how we celebrate as a college and take that into our workplace with our patients.
Fantastic, Trudi. Articulate as always. JS.
Tough call, really, Shahid. I would say it doesn't matter the skin of your color. If you cut, everybody's blood is the same color. Be true to yourself, be true to your values, what you were brought up with, what's in your DNA. It's all the same. Let's keep on with that as a motto.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, JS, for that pearls of wisdom. Anis.
Yep, I would say keep the growth mindset, and NHS is an amazing place. Most of the people are really here to help you. You need to come out of your comfort zone. And to do that one, you should try yourself, but also try to support others. And I can give you one example. I could never be a chair for the VIPSIC unless one of my colleagues one day picked up the phone. She said that you are the right person. You should run for it. Had she not made that phone call, I would never run for that one. And I would never be in this position today. Thanks.
Thank you, Anis. And an excellent choice, whoever had said that, to run the VIPSIC. So you've done wonderful work. Thank you for that. And last but not least, Amna.
I would just say that the one skill that everyone should have is the skill to hit our own head with a shoe whenever we are having subconscious bias. I think that's the answer to the discrimination for me.
Thank you so much. And on that note, a huge thank you to Professor J S Bamrah, to Dr Trudi Seneviratne, to Dr Amna Hussain, Dr Anis, and our organizers, and of course, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, who have set up this platform like last year and the year before and again. And we can only go from strength to strength if we continue to work together. I must say, my mentors coming to this country were not from Pakistan, they were from India. I can name one of them, is Professor Bhomik. That's the richness that we have as South Asians. So thank you all very much. Thank you for everyone for joining in. It's been absolutely fantastic. We've nearly touched 180, which is brilliant. Thank you for the conversations that have taken place on the side. We will hopefully continue to work together. Thank you very much, anyone, and good evening. Good afternoon, rather.